If you turn your AM radio dial to 980, Monday, August 22nd, after the noon news, you will hear the voice of a broadcaster who says she cannot remember ever having an iota of doubt about her desire to be a journalist. TV just seemed to happen to her, and now NW Radio has her on their permanent roster. It is my pleasure to welcome Sara to Studio 4 to tell us more.
Good morning.
Well, welcome and congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's quite an honor from somebody who's done the job before, too.
Yes, and I will tell you, personally, there's nothing permanent about radio.
Oh, no, there's nothing permanent about anything in this business.
Or television.
Days. Yes.
You know, we get hired to get fired.
Yes, we do.
Any aspirations to be the next Premier of British Columbia?
None whatsoever, and I have to tell you, Fanny, I think it worked for me in the job interview when I said that, too.
Really?
Yeah, sure. Why
well,
not?
Probably. And as you know, Premier Christy Clark was in that chair.
I've heard this.
And then Michael Smith.
Michael Smith
in that chair.
Done an amazing job.
Temporarily.
Yeah. I talked to Michael yesterday, and it's a little tough because he's been doing it for many, many months, and he's done such a good job with it. And he's just been incredibly gracious, but he has this great life in Victoria and really couldn't make that move to Vancouver for the show. And so he's going to continue doing what he's done so well. And so he'll still be on the radio. He'll be on plenty. He'll be filling in for Bill. He'll fill in for me. So he is still very much a part of CKNW, which is great.
It is great. And as you know, it's nice to have a female in the mix. Not a token female, but a female in the mix. And obviously, the program director, one Ian Koenigsfest, is evolved.
Ian Koenigsfest and Tom Plasteris. I would
Tom
say
Plasteris.
both of them.
Who signed the contract?
Tom Plasteris. So
okay.
It was...
Tom's evolved too, then.
A lot of people
he hired
did stop
me.
Well, there you go.
I think he hired me.
Excellent taste. Then,
I know he fired me.
Well, there went that.
But that's okay. Others went out.
People were great about stopping me on the street and talking about how they were looking forward to hearing a woman on the radio, a different perspective in the afternoons. And you think, wow, think back how people did not say that. You were just telling me a few minutes ago about how things had changed from when you had started out on the radio, and people wouldn't listen to a woman's voice.
Oh, it's true. We had complaints. There was a woman reading the news. Oh, alas, alack. Mind you, that was many moons ago. So it's all changed. And Barbara from certainly in public broadcasting forged the way, and Judy LaMarche and myself and others forged the way on private radio, and Shirley Stalker and some of them.
Shirley's great. And she's been very, very encouraging, and she's been fantastic.
I bet.
Yeah.
And when you start, it's funny. I don't know if she's still doing any of this. It will probably be Mr. Koenigsfest, but he'll be in the back saying, like, smile. Maybe not. Maybe you're a trained broadcaster now, so nobody's helping you.
I hope so. After 20 years, that would be the case. They have been great. No, nobody has told me to smile. Nobody really needs to tell me to smile. I tend to do that anyway.
Right, but you can hear a smile on the radio. You know that.
Yes.
Very much so.
Yes. Radio's new, relatively new for me. I've only been doing this for a couple of years, and it is a whole new learning curve, but I have found it to be so much more approachable. So much great discussion can happen in radio, and I just find that I loved it more than I had thought I was going to.
Well, first of all, you don't have to look your best. Well, you do if you have a guest. But on the days
I dressed up for you today, though.
Okay, but on the days you don't have a guest, who knows? You could be in your pajamas.
Nobody knows, and that's going to be our little secret.
Exactly, but you do have guests on the show, so you will have to spiff up.
I've heard this, yes. I'll have to make sure.
Take me back to your beginnings. From the time you were a young girl, you wanted to be a journalist, really?
Yeah, I know for a lot of people this is hard to believe. I hear it from so many young people today too, where they say, I don't know what I want to do. I hear it from my daughter. I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. And I always have to keep my mouth shut, because I was very fortunate that way, that I knew, you know, as far back as elementary school, that I wanted to be some kind of reporter, or to work in news, to, you know, talk about current events and do all those kinds of things. So that was always my goal from day one. I worked on the school newspaper in grade, must have been 9 or 10 at Cloverdale Junior Secondary. That was it. I was sold. That was all I ever wanted to do after that.
Anybody in the family in news or broadcasting?
Nope. Just me.
Hollywood? Nothing like that?
Nothing at all.
Just you?
No, my family, they were longtime federal employees. My mother worked for the federal government. They are teachers. My dad was a bus driver. This was something very different when I decided that this is what I wanted to do. It took my dad years to recover from the fact that I wasn't going to go into the public service. He really thought that was the be-all, end-all. And it is a great job. It just wasn't the job for me. He just didn't bring up the word pension, did he?
He did, as a matter of fact.
Did he?
Yes, he did.
Smart
and now,
dad.
In hindsight, now when I look back, I think, boy, my dad had it going on. He knew about how we start to care about job security as we get older. So he was right in many ways.
In the contract world, it's just a different ballgame, but you have so much fun.
Yes.
So, Surrey Leader, you were there too?
I was at the Surrey Leader. That was my first reporting job as a reporter there when I was still in journalism school, and that was a great experience.
Do you remember your first story?
Boy, oh boy, good question. No, I don't remember my first story. We did so many. I was the intern. You know, I was the student there, so I got shoveled every story imaginable.
Probably.
Yeah.
But the first story you broke or anything like that in your path on television,
I remember
somewhere where you thought,
first-
this is it.
Yeah, I started out
This story has legs.
as a writer. I started out as a writer at UTV, which a lot of people still have very fond memories of what UTV was on
It
Channel
was
13.
CKVU, Daryl Duke.
You were there?
Norm Clement, I was there. I did expose. Look out. We regressed Long John Baldry. I'm not kidding. We
Really?
exposed the late Jack Webster and others. Johnny Depp. I know, he was doing 21 Jump.
That was quite the
Long
time, wasn't
before
it?
you were born.
No, I was in high school when 21 Jump Street was on, and I loved it.
Okay.
Loved it.
Well, I had Johnny Depp in the studio. Why we didn't maintain that friendship, I don't know.
Who knew, though, what was going to happen
Exactly.
with Johnny Depp, right? We could say that about a lot of things. So I started out as a writer, and that was the great thing about working at UTV at that time. They had a really great system for moving people along. Nobody got there ahead of schedule. So you had to really pay your dues. So I started out as a writer and associate produced on a number of different news shows, and then they kind of tried you out in reporting to see if you could actually do it, and then if that worked out, then maybe you were going to do it next week, and maybe, and it just sort of gradually built from there.
Sure. My first story I know was about the cab disturbance, and I had my little tape recorder, went to the story, came back to the radio station, thought, I have got the best story, I got the best clips, I'm telling you, and I didn't have the recorder on. Yeah.
I've had that happen too.
I know.
You have to recover,
It's
right?
just a switch.
But you have to remember to turn it on is the way, well, back then, now you wouldn't have to worry as much about that.
No, that's good. I like traveling with a crew.
Crews are
When
good.
I worked at the CBC, there was always a crew. Not so much anymore, but certainly at CBC television, you had a sound person and your producer and your writer.
And-
easy to do a story.
You know, I have to tell you, in the last 3 or 4 years, I've worked at a number of different newsrooms around, and I was working part-time and here, there, and everywhere. Really got a great sense of all these different media outlets in town. This is a great city for media organizations and just the quality and the level of people that are working here. And it has been amazing to check that out at all these different places, that I have a lot of respect for the people who try to do this for a living.
What are the challenges of chasing a story for you? Are there challenges of broadcasting?
Keeping your job these days is
That.
a challenge in broadcasting.
Balancing?
Well, yeah, in this particular job, what I have found in the last couple of days is that everybody has thoughts. Everybody thinks that they can do the job as well as you can, or that they can do it better. And they want to let you know that they think that they can do it better. So I think the big key here is it coming off and appearing as fair as possible to both sides so that you make everybody feel like they got their say.
And you have to have edge, as you know, on News Talk Radio.
Yes, you do.
Will you do an editorial in the afternoon, or will you just start the show?
I don't think I'm
Have
gonna-
you decided?
I'm not going to rant for the sake of ranting. I think you'll find that I'm pretty passionate on a lot of different events as they happen. And so, yeah, I will take the opportunity. I think that's the great thing about the show, right? You get to have your say. You get to tell people what you think. And I will certainly take that opportunity.
Well, as you know, when women rant, they think we're hysterical.
It's very, very fine
Ask Sheila
line.
Copps. No, it is a fine line, and I don't think it works. I think women who are empowered and have opinion and have depth, that's different. But you have phone callers.
Oh, yes.
Yes, so you can go, line one, go ahead.
Yeah, I think when I find that I am going to make an argument or have a rant or, you know, have my editorial, as you say, I want to make sure that I am extremely well prepared for that. I want to make sure my argument is very well thought out, because you're right, people will call you on it if they think you are not. And I think one of the words I've heard somebody use is women sound shrill. And I think you also have to be very careful in moderating how you're going to put that forward. People have been really good to me. I think I've been around long enough so that people don't have that perception, but you want to make sure that people will take that from you, will take that opinion from you.
Well, everybody wants to be heard. I know when I did talk radio for so many years, it was mostly men who called in.
That's still the case, I think.
Fewer females. Don't know why.
Well, I probably do, but I won't tell it. We won't mention that. You mean they think they know everything?
Well, there's some of that, but I also think that's changing. We get it's a growing number of women, and I think statistically it is now shown that, you know, something like 40% of the people who listen to talk radio, in particular 980, are women. And we certainly want them to come in and have their say. And maybe they just felt before like they weren't having their say, or they didn't have the opportunity to have their say. And we hope that's going to change.
Sure, could be. And if you're raised male in any country, you're raised to have the answer.
Yeah,
you know, really.
And we want women
and
to
that's
feel like
and
they
women
can have
the
answer.
answers too. And maybe we just don't. Well, we do talk just as much as they do.
Sure we do. Are you
I
kidding me?
admit it. Simi, Sara, our guest, she'll be hosting a new radio show. Well, it's a radio show that's been there for some time.
I'm filling the slot, let's
It'll
say.
be your show.
Yes.
Coming up late August.
So how's things with the ex?
You know, he consistently fails to comply with his child maintenance obligations, notwithstanding Part 7 of the FRA.
Did you obtain a maintenance order pursuant to Section 91?
Yeah, but under Section 96, subsection 2, he's trying to prove that it's grossly iniquitous not to cancel his arrears. The aforementioned motion is clearly injudicious and or mendacious. Cookie?
Broadcaster Simi, Sara says it was a happy accident when she fell into television.
No. Did I say that? I don't remember saying that.
I read it. I would only quote you if, well, don't believe everything you read.
I was a student, and I was very fortunate to continue working on when I interned at a TV station.
Okay.
I guess that's a way of falling into it.
That kind of happy accident.
That was a happy accident.
And you've done certainly lots of work, and you went to Langara.
I did. I went to Langara.
To
I went
J
to Simon
School.
Fraser University. I went to Langara Journalism School. Yeah.
How did you meet one Dave Gary, that funny guy? Great broadcaster, funny man. You hosted a show with him.
Yeah, the great 3 years that we had together. I met Dave Gary literally, Fanny, on my very first day of work at the television station. I was a student interning at the station for 5 weeks. The empty desk was next to Dave Gary. And so they put this 21-year-old girl right out of journalism school next to Dave Gary, and that was really it. We hit it off from day one, and he was always very, very good to me and showed me the ropes and was patient with me, and we used to go out and have a great time. And you know.
Sure. Well, as you know, when you put two people on the air, the magic is either there or it's not. You can't grow it.
No. No.
You seem to have it with
Well,
him.
we had been friends for many, many years prior to that, and it was our dream to do something together. And when that opportunity came up, we leapt at it, and we were friends before, we were friends after, we just happened to do the show for 3 years.
What did you learn from him about how to be an effective communicator?
Dave,
how to tell a story?
Yeah, Dave is probably the most brilliant television writer I have ever come across. Like, I am in awe of his ability, and I still am. He just knows how to tell a story. He knows how to connect with people on a level that I've never seen anybody else be able to do that. He would go out and do streeters with people on the street, and people would be happy to line up and talk to him, whereas most of the time with reporters, you have a hard time getting people to stop and talk to you when you go out with a camera. But he just has a certain magic with people.
Yes, he has the Mike McCardle gene, too.
I prefer to call it the Kavorka from Seinfeld. That was just, he has that.
Exactly.
He has that ability with people. Yeah.
Well, I was a roving reporter once, many moons ago again, and it's tough because you put a mic in somebody's face and they kind of run down the block, or they tell you to
Yeah, they
go
don't want to
away.
do it, right.
And they don't say it that nicely.
But he manages to always get the best out of people when he stops to talk to them, and they end up being hysterical, and they end up being like the total character in a story that you never saw coming. And he is just so incredibly good at it, so it's not any surprise that Dave is now in Toronto, and he will be hosting the new Global Toronto Morning Show come September.
How great.
Yes.
How great. Now, on your list of love to interview, like all of us, Mandela, Clinton, Tony Blair.
I've never interviewed any
George
of those people.
Clooney.
Oh, George Clooney.
You know, do you have people that because we all have our wish lists, the dream list. Next year, and you'll say this to your producer 100 times, try and get.
We've already had some discussions about that. That, you know, I think a lot of times we don't get the big interviews because we're either afraid to ask, or we think there's going to be too many layers of bureaucracy to get to those people.
Always ask.
Right,
You
exactly.
know that.
And so we've had that talk now about, you know, we're going to ask, and we're going to make those requests, and we'll just see what happens. A lot of times they can stop for 10 minutes and talk on the phone to us, and so we'll certainly be trying to get anybody and everybody that we can.
Well, sure, because you have the magic of a phone line. We don't. We call it, in the biz, we have to get meat in the seat.
Yeah,
They actually
that's
have
a
to.
huge difference.
They actually have to be here.
That's new for me, and I just thought it was so incredibly liberating. And I thought, what? You don't have to go chase them down with a camera? This is great. So it opens up a whole new world.
Sure does, because as you say, you can connect people
Anywhere.
Panels. Will you have regulars? Have you thought about it? Are you that far?
We are thinking about that right now. We're kind of going through that process. You know, we want to make sure. I mean, Bill's got a lot of great regulars on in the morning on the Bill Good show.
And don't steal them, because I'm telling you, it's competitive. Yes.
He's got great people on there. Wouldn't that be nice if I could? No, I can't do that.
No.
Not at all. And that's one of the great things about NW. I've worked at other places where it's been quite competitive between shows. It's not like that. I mean, that is, we're all working towards one goal there, and if you do this, we're going to try to further and advance it with somebody else a little bit later in the day.
Sure, I'll share the incinerator guest with you, but I won't share George Clooney. You know how that is.
You know, George Clooney would probably like to be shared, Fanny.
You think?
So I don't think he'd have a problem with that, as long as we
don't think so.
Yeah.
Tell me about your cooking incarnation, because you did have a cooking show.
What a great show. Oh, City Cooks. We loved doing City Cooks. I think everybody, all the crew, everybody who worked on it, it was a fantastic job that we did for 6 years. I think we did 1,000 episodes. Yeah, a
1,000?
lot. Yeah,
More than 1,000?
Yes, we did more than 1,000
Really?
episodes.
Jamie Oliver, I saw Jamie.
You know, my favorite all-time favorite guest on that show was, and I think really my favorite guest I've ever interviewed was Anthony Bourdain.
Oh.
It just,
He's
come
coming
on.
back. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know
He said,
that.
well, you have to get on it, Simi.
I think I'd better get on that.
I think he's here in October.
Oh.
And we hope to get him in this chair. And
I think you might have to wrestle me for that one.
Okay, well, that's okay. We
I
can
will
share.
definitely put him on the list. He was fantastic.
put him on the list, because he's great, and, well,
We just interviewed so many people who, you know, even starting out, we might have gotten them at the beginning of their career who moved on, like Dale McKay, who just won Top Chef.
Right.
And when he first came to town to work at Lumiere, we had him on the show at that time. So it just turned out to be this great breeding ground for all sorts of chefs, really important, like people who went on to really make their name.
Sure. Do you have a weak area, a weak region, interviews you don't like to do, be it medical, food?
No.
You like current affairs, you like politics.
Yep, I think a healthy curiosity.
Sports? Are you on
love
sports? Okay.
Love sports. I think the thing about this show is somebody asked me once, like, how do you do all that? And I said, you know what? It's just curiosity. I think if you are curious enough about things, which I am, I'm curious about everything, you tend to ask questions that I think anybody would want asked, and they want to know just as much as I do. And that's just, I let that work for me.
Is there an investigative part of you where you would like to do the Peter Warren?
We talked about the
Peter Warren thing?
We talked about the Peter Warren thing, yes. And that's the great thing about having access to this fantastic newsroom that they have at CKNW. I mean, that's a machine. And they turn out some of the best investigative reporting in town. We will certainly have access to that, be able to work with them and break our own stuff as well.
Well, as you know, machines are machines. Global's a machine.
Yes.
It is. CKNW, a machine.
Oh.
I don't know this, but I think they could put Donald Duck on NW and Donald could get ratings. You know
Let's
how
hope
it is.
so. Let's hope so. I'm as good as Donald Duck, shall we?
Let's hope. Or Daisy.
Yes.
But you know, there's some stations you can do fabulous radio, and
But I
no
don't think
one's
anybody
listening.
ever takes it for granted. You know, I mean, that's a nice thing. Yes, this is a city where people really, their media viewing habits are out of habit. I've heard that said over and over and over again. I've been on the other side of it. Now that I'm on this side of it, I can tell you, nobody in that organization takes that for granted, right? We are constantly trying to stay on top of things because you can't let anybody get ahead of you. And so that's one of the fabulous things about working there, is that people are hungry. They're still hungry.
Sure, and ask the question that you're afraid to ask always. It's the best advice I ever got, like how much you making, Simi?
Not going to tell you, Fanny.
How
How much are you making, Fanny?
I'm not going to tell you, Simi. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Look forward to listening to you for sure. Thank you. Simi, Sara, CKNW News Talk Radio.